What do you do when you feel like your life changes are also causing your friendships to change? And how do you cultivate healthy relationships as an adult? Today we're going to be discussing both of those and some more common questions and issues around friendship and what that looks like, navigating that as you change from being a kid into an adult, So I'm Jenna, this is Cambry, and we're back today with the To Be Redefined podcast. And yeah, we're going to talk about friendships today.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like in some ways it feels like a topic that, like for one, everyone can relate to, like everyone has like friendships and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But even across like spectrum of ages, like just like what you were just saying, when you're like a young child, you have friends and it's like you have play dates and things like that. And then you become a teenager and you have your high school friendships and all those things. And it gets more complicated as an adult, you know, because things are different. There are different things going on in your life. I think that there's more of a routine in like childhood and high school that like the friendships depend on that, and then when that is removed as you move into adulthood and there's less stability as you're figuring out your career or your personal relationships and things like that, like it can just be really complicated and it can feel like those friendships are changing as well.
That is so true, and I feel like I liked what you said about like childhood. I feel like a lot is kind of out of your control in a way, and there's a lot more structure and a lot more like, I go to school for this many hours, or I go do sports for this many hours, and so you're put like in these situations where it's natural that you're going to find friends in those situations and you're going to make friends, and you kind of just have to. And it's kind of just, it's somewhat easy, I guess you could say, to be friends with people when you see them for like several hours every single day. Yeah, exactly. So it's like if you're in a situation that you have to be in, like school or something like that, you know, it's like
extracurriculars and things like
you're gonna find friends to survive, you know what I mean? So I definitely feel like that's very true, and I feel like, I don't know about you, but I've really kind of struggled in adulthood of like knowing where to meet people, and yes, you have work where it is like a forced environment where you're forced to be around people, whether you like them or not. But it's not the same as like having a common interest with someone, where like you're
choosing like to be friends with someone. It's more like, well, we might as well get along because we're together like 8 hours.
We're stuck here, So sometimes you get lucky when you're in a work environment and you do meet people that you like and get along with well, but more often than not, it's like everyone just kind of feels like an acquaintance, and it's
like
hard to
you tolerate them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of relationships kind of get surface level into adulthood, where it's like you're cool, but like there's not a deep like connection with people a lot of the time.
Like there are some people where it's just like, I probably would never choose to hang out with you aside from our one interaction here and there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I'll hang out with you because like I need some kind of community, or like I have to because of work or whatever it is. But most people I would not like choose or go out of my way to be like super close with them and like make time out of my schedule.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part too, is that like especially when there is so much going on all the time between work and family and, you know, your relationship with your husband and things like that, like our time is limited. And I feel like especially as young adults, where, you know, someone who's like well into their 30s and 40s, like their life is pretty like set at that time. They found their career, they're well into their relationships, but all these things are still being cultivated in their own lives. And so you really have to pick and choose like what you're wanting to invest in.
That is true.
Like you can't be friends with everybody, you know, and you can't like pour into every single relationship that you have, because you'll just get burnt out.
That is true.
And I just think that, you know, when like, and I was thinking too about like photography for you, how that's something that you want to like dedicate time to, and like you can't like just be like, oh well, I'll figure that out one day.
Right.
It's really important for you to figure out now.
Right.
And so there are some other things that are just less important at this stage of life.
Sometimes they just have to take like the back seat.
Yeah.
When you're prioritizing other things. But yeah, I guess my first question would be, like, you had a good amount of friends in high school, and what do you feel like the progression of you growing up and kind of like things changing? Do you feel like you are still friends with the majority of those people? Do you feel like those relationships have changed? Do you feel like they've kind of gotten distant? What do you feel like the progression of that looked like from like when you were in high school with people to now?
Yeah, I mean, in high school, you know, everyone had like their friend group, you know, that had multiple people in it, and you saw them pretty consistently because, again, you either like didn't have a choice because of like school or sports, or like that's just what you did. It's like Friday nights you stayed out super late with your friend group. And I mean, for one, I just started to make healthier decisions for myself, and like I definitely did limit like those late nights, but also like the kind of people that I was around and things like that. So I definitely, like, I had a much larger circle in like high school, and even like the year immediately following it, like during my gap year, I was kind of just doing whatever I wanted and like hanging out with a bunch of people, and like we would stay up so late. It was just like, you know, I don't know if this is like good for me.
Yeah. Totally fair.
And so yeah, I think that especially as as my time started getting more limited and I started working full time or volunteering at my church, or like just having my own hobbies and things, there became less time for that like consistency in that larger circle of friends. And so
kind of impossible to keep up with that many people.
Yeah, exactly. And so my friend group definitely is just much smaller now. And I think that even like a couple years ago, I was like sad about that like it felt like I had lost so many friends, or like people had moved away, or we just like have such different lives that they don't mesh anymore. But now I'm like really content with it, because I realized, like, I mean, I can be friendly with everyone, but I don't have the capacity to be like all in and have these like really robust, strong friendships with everyone that I meet. And that's okay. Like, we weren't meant to do that. I think that connection and community are so important for us, but like there are like those two extremes where you're always surrounded by people. And I mean, I think even that isn't really connection, because how well can like a million people know you?
That is true. How well can you know about
exactly. And so instead, like as a young adult, it's been more like, okay, well, what relationships and friendships are the most valuable to me, and how do I like water those friendships, you know, and like help them to grow and even like deepen. Like we were talking about how like there are some people who know you at a very shallow level, because like your coworkers, you see them like every day, and so there's, I'm sure, certain things that you talk about with them and that are like but that's like the bare minimum for conversation, you know.
It's like you're just kind of talking to them to get through the day, and there's nothing else to like nothing else to do. So what else?
That weather today.
Right? You can only say that so many times. No, I definitely agree. I think I had a good circle of people, because I grew up in like a really tight-knit dance studio, and we all grew up from literally like 3 years old together. So like, and we were together 6 days a week for our entire lives, for like at least 4 hours a day. And so obviously you're going to be super, super close with people, and you go through like hard things with each other, and it's definitely like a huge bonding moment. And then going into my senior year of high school, I switched dance studios, which was a really hard decision. And so I basically had to leave behind my entire group of friends there and move on to another group of friends, which I did meet a lot of really cool people, but then COVID happened and I that all got cut short and I never got to even say goodbye to any of them, so that was kind of lame. And so yeah, I think I still hung on to a good portion of friends, or at least tried to, going out of high school. But again, it was kind of hard with COVID because it just kind of made everything super weird and you couldn't really hang out with people and stuff like that. But I did have a few close friends that I still hung on to, and we'd hang out a lot, and we'd be super close. We'd tell each other everything, everything would be awesome. And then just throughout time, whether it's we just get so busy that we just kind of grow apart, or a large majority of it has just been people who don't have anything in common with me, and that's totally okay. That's just how life works sometimes.
But you can't force that friendship,
Right, because I got married at 18. How many people do that? Not many. So a lot of people just don't really understand where you're coming from with that. And so, I feel my circle narrowed pretty quickly. Which, I don't know, it felt kind of like a natural progression. A lot of my relationships did feel pretty surface level. I think there were a few that definitely hurt more than others, especially because some of them were due to falling out with people and kind of dramatic things. But I just kind of realized as time went on, first of all, I just didn't have time for everybody in my life. I was working all the time, I was married, there's just not enough time for all of that.
And those are your priorities.
Right, your family unit is your priority, your career is your priority. Obviously relationships are important, and that's also something that I had to kind of figure out as I grew a little bit, because I kind of just was well, my husband's my best friend, who cares, that's all I need in my family, and that's good enough, versus as women we do need relationships, and we do need those friendships and stuff. So my perspective on that definitely changed throughout time, but I don't know, I feel it was a natural progression, and a lot of some of my friends moved away too, so that was part of it, that's kind of something out of your control that kind of you try to stay in touch, but it's just not very possible to do so. But I just had to learn too, there were some people who kind of chose not to be friends with me over whatever it was, or over just some of the turmoil going on in my life, and some of the rumors they had heard or things like that. And I just had to realize you're not everyone's cup of tea, it's okay. And the people who want to be in your life and who want to invest in you will. If they wanted to, they will. That is so true. And just kind of let the people who didn't want to do that, or just couldn't, they're not the bad guys necessarily.
It's just they didn't have the capacity either. That kind of perspective.
Exactly, and just kind of let them do what they needed to do, and I do what I need to do, focus on my goals, and honestly, becoming friends with you has been really kind of an unexpected. It was kind of an unexpected
seriously
thing, but it's been one of the biggest blessings ever for me, because we met through a mutual friend and just hit it off right away. Never looked back.
And it's funny because there are some friends that I have that I've known literally before I can remember, that's when we met basically. And it's been so interesting to think about the different seasons of life, and how friendships can affect and impact those as well. We met each other as adults already. We were both, I think we were both over 18. Sure.
Somewhere in the ballpark.
Here or something like that. And it has been one of my most important friendships, you know, because we had to choose each other and just figure out what effort looked like in the relationship, and figuring out okay, you live 35 minutes away.
Where can we make this work?
And we definitely had a connection where it was it was so good that we were like, well, we can't give this up.
No, I'm not going to not be friends with you. You're stuck with it forever, so.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, and I think that there's so much value in finding those like really important connections in your life and kind of just like double down on them.
Yeah.
Because, and I feel like as young adults and even as just Christians and women, it can kind of feel like we're supposed to have like a bunch of friends. We're supposed to be surrounded by a bunch of people, you know. And I just disagree with that. I think that it's very healthy actually to be like, you know, these people are who I have time for in my life right now, and that's not to say that other people don't matter, that like we never get coffee or anything like that.
But it's like okay to have surface level relationships and understand that not every relationship has to be super deep, because I think that's something that I had a hard time with, is like when I was a kid I had some really deep, close, like awesome relationships. And obviously, like we've said, a lot of that was circumstantial, but that doesn't mean like when you're best friends with people for like 10 years, that heart connection is there. It's like I feel like I really struggled with that. Of like there was a while there where I kind of didn't really have a deep connection with anybody, like except for my family and my husband, and I just kind of felt like just kind of sad about it, you know, like, and it just felt very unfulfilling. Like a lot of my relationships felt very unfulfilling because. Like, we'd talk and we'd get coffee and we'd whatever, but it just wasn't, like, that heart connection wasn't there. And so, like, honestly, meeting you was, like, that was the way that I felt. Like, I haven't felt that level of friendship with someone in, like, a really long time. And so, I don't know, it's just been, like, a really big blessing, because it just kind of came out of nowhere, too.
It was, like, so
random.
It wasn't something that either of us were expecting, and I just remember, like, the first time we, like, really hang out, we just didn't want the data.
I know,
you
know? We just went to the bank together. We just did a bunch of random stuff. Went to the library, like, and that's just, I don't know. I feel like it was definitely a very like God thing, because I feel like He knew that we needed each other. I don't know. And just like in our stage of life we were in, and the healing phase that we're in, like
the things that we have in common.
Like I've never met a friend that has such similar stories and like experiences as you. And so I just feel like God knew it, we needed each other.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, and it's okay to like you said, double down and put all of that effort into those deep relationships. Like it's okay to have those surface level relationships where you're chill with people, you can be nice to people and drink coffee and like care about them, but like the level of effort, especially if you have limited time, if you have limited resources, like that level of care, really like pouring that into those special people in your life. And and just like realizing too, like there's a million people who, you know, obviously everyone has to focus on their own life and their own goals and their own things, but as an adult, like you really see who your friends are, I think, because they have to put in the effort in order to like reciprocate and keep things going. And if they don't like you, it's very apparent. Because the level of effort is just not there. So
no, I completely agree. And I also think it's very telling too, just the friends who are willing to do life with you, where it's less about like, you know, let's make like a checklist of like who we need to get coffee with, you know, to like satisfy some kind of quota in our hearts or something. I mean, last week I was just like, hey, want to come to my sister's wisdom teeth consultation?
Bestied so hard I made it to her sister's dentist appointment.
And just things like that, where it's less about what you do and more about like who's with you for the ride.
Like we don't have to go freaking take a vacation to like freaking Miami together or something to know that we care about each other. Like we can we've gone grocery shopping together before, like random stuff like that, and it's just
and even if there is like a long stretch of time where we're not able to see each other, like we take things right back up again, like we right where we pick up right where we left off. And, and I think that there's so much value in that. And so I guess all of that to say as well that like if you recognize those relationships in your life that are so special and they're a gift from God, like pay attention to that, like who those people are, and really work on cultivating those relationships and going even deeper than before, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that there has to be like a level of acceptance of like, well, I have these people, I have this this group that I rely on and care deeply for. Like I have them, and it's okay if I don't have like a bunch of other people. It's okay if this friendship isn't exactly what I thought it would be, because at the end of the day I have these important ones that are steadfast and they're not going anywhere, you know. I think that there has to be like an acceptance of both of those things.
For sure. Like you can't just keep wishing that things are going to be different, because that doesn't help no matter what situation we're talking about. You just have to accept what is and do what you can to improve the situation. Like, I mean, if you don't have like super close connections, because I mean, I think we all go through phases like where it kind of just feels like we're not super close to anybody. Yeah. Like hang in there and realize that like those connections, those moments, like they could be like just around the corner for you. And a lot of the time it is just those random moments where it's like it doesn't even make sense, but now all of a sudden like you feel like you've been friends with somebody forever. And like I think too, there is a level of kind of just working on yourself too, and not relying on any relationships or friendships to like fill that void in you or fix you too, because that's not a fair responsibility to put on anybody, or like expectation going into a friendship or any kind of relationship. And so I think it's like really important to like always be working on yourself, obviously, but if you're waiting to find those people, like it's okay to like think about what kind of friends do you want to have and what kind of people you want to surround yourself with, and then also like you have to kind of be that person a lot of the time to attract those type of people. Absolutely. And so if you want this type of friend who's like pushing you to be better or encouraging you, or they, you know, whatever that is for you, like you need to be that person to other people as well, because that's gonna like kind of attract that in your life, you know.
Because if you're waiting until you have a good friend to be a good friend, then you're not going to have a lot of friends. You know? And so, I think that that's really important to not just be thinking of like how people can connect to you and how you need good friends, but also be thinking, well, how can I be a better friend? You know, and I think that when you have two people who are thinking that way, where one is thinking, you know, how can I be a better friend to this person, and the other is thinking the exact same thing, like that's a beautiful thing, you know. And as far as like finding those connections and finding those friendships, I think that like finding people who have stuff in common with you is like that's the whole point of friendship. Like I remember, I think it's a quote by C.S. Lewis, and he was talking about how like lovers, they look at each other, but friends, they look at something else, and then they see each other and they're like, oh, you too? I thought I was the only one.
I like that.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that that's really important too, to not just think of like, well, I need to find a person, you know, because I mean, things do change, and if you don't actually have anything in common with someone, then there won't be it won't be enough to like keep that relationship going. Right,
like that. I feel like yes, you can be friends and even good friends with people who have like different than you, have different opinions than you, different beliefs than you, whatever. Like that's totally great and fine. But I feel like it does like that level of connection that we're all looking for. I feel like definitely it is important to have things in common with those people and common ground, because that's, I mean, that's how you foster that like connection, you know?
Yeah, and seeing like love and passion in someone else, like, and knowing that it's mirrored in you is like a really cool thing and a really cool experience. And obviously each person is unique in the things that they like and don't like, and so that kind of is a responsibility of everyone for themselves to just be like, well, here is an area where I could find someone who has things in common. Like for me, I found a lot of great friends at church, like in my young adults community group and things like that. But there are plenty of ways to go about it. Like I know people who have met because they played pickleball and things like that. And so there's so many different ways to find really cool, interesting people who you have a lot in common with, and you can form these really interesting, great relationships with.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like, I mean, relationships can really make or break you as a person. And so, like, not only finding common ground with people, but I think it's so important to pay attention to how people make you feel. Because, I mean, obviously people are not perfect, and things happen in relationships, and there's struggles and things to work through, but it is important to pay attention to, is this person fueling me? Is this person kind of like filling me up when I'm around them? Do I feel like I am working towards being a better version of myself when I'm around them? Do I feel super drained after I've been with them? Like, it's important to pay attention to those things too, because I think that really helps in a relationship to know that you can trust the other person's intentions and know that you can, like, not have to worry about what that person is thinking, because, like, there's been times when we don't, talk all the time, or we don't see each other very often, but, like, there's not a moment where I'm, like, worried that your intentions are, like, oh, she's mad at me, she doesn't like me anymore. Like, I don't have to worry about that. I just know you're dealing with your own stuff. And so having that, like, being able to trust that in other people, and then also having people who can, like, trust that in you, and who know your intentions are not bad, because then you're free to go focus on the stuff that you need to focus on. Because, like, having people who are super needy in your life and super like draining, if you have big goals and, like, big things you're trying to accomplish, like, that's not,
or even just wanting to have, like, a life outside of that friendship,
like, having super, like, clingy, needy friends, like, that doesn't help you. Like, you need people who are, like, cheering for you to go do what you need to do, and, like, they're also still here, like, when things are hard, and, like, you can come back to each other and pick up where you left off, and not have to be second guessing or questioning or, like, wasting energy on worrying about that person or what they think. So I think that's definitely very important, and also just, like, I know it's cliche, but you become, like, the 5 people you hang around the most. And so picking those people wisely, and knowing that that does have, like, a direct effect on who you are as a person, is very important. So
absolutely. And I think that leads well into just what boundaries should look like in friendships, because I think we've talked about boundaries with parents and things like that, but I mean, you have to have, like, good, healthy boundaries with your friends too. And it's not like a bad word, boundaries are a good
every
thing.
Relationship should have some kind of boundaries.
Yes, exactly. And I think that what I love about our relationship is that we're able to be like, I can't do this tonight. Like, I've got to tap out, and we're just like, okay,
see you next time.
And I think that, and sometimes when it comes to friends who, like, you feel like you've been pouring, like, everything into them, it can feel, like, really difficult to have those conversations where you're just like, because for us, we're very understanding with each other. There's no, like, offense taken or anything like that. But it can be, like, very offensive to some people to be, like, to be told no. And so, but it really is kind of like this courageous thing to be like, no, I'm at capacity. I can't be there for you in the way that you're wanting. And I think that, and what we were talking about earlier is that to expect another person to be everything for you and to satisfy all your needs, that's a really awful position to put anyone in. And
no one should be responsible for that.
Exactly. And I think that there needs to be, like, a level of personal responsibility where we don't just assume that everyone else has the problems, that we say that, I wonder if there are times when I've acted like that towards another person, and if so, I want to be a more healthy person so that I can have healthier relationships. And so, I think that it's always good to, like, reflect on yourself and and see, like, how other people are draining you and making you overextend yourself and things like that. Like, both of them can be true, and I think that it's always good to just talk about boundaries and
Yeah.
and voice them, you know. And
Yeah. Well, in communication, I could go on a rant about that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, communication is number 1, 2 in any relationship, because, like, if you are not setting those expectations with people, you're not setting those boundaries, and you're not communicating clearly what your expectations are, I feel like that's, like, number 1 where issues arise, is when you're not communicating what you expect, but then you're getting mad at people when they don't meet your expectations.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's part of being an adult, right? Like, to be able to communicate and explain things, explain how you're feeling in an effective but also, like, kind way as much as you can.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's kind of, like, number 1, and that's how you, like, avoid a lot of some of the kind of, like, silly issues that come up. And yeah, like, I think that is kind of part of growing and changing and things. Like, some people are in different life phases than you too, like, and that's, and we all grow and, like, mature at different rates. Especially, like, some people are, like, some of my friends are having babies right now, some of them are getting married, some of them are in college, like, so it's just things are, like, there's a vast majority of places people are at, and, like, some people, you know, they just don't have the same life experiences as you, and so therefore, like, sometimes the relationship may not be, like, compatible or be working, because maybe they, like, need more than more from you, or expect more from you right now than you're able to give, just because of the phase of life you're in.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes there's some misunderstanding as far as, like, they don't understand that because they're not in that phase of life.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that, like, that relationship, you should burn bridges, and that relationship will never, like, be a good relationship. It's okay to kind of, like, distance yourself a little bit from people, and then, like, who knows, down the road, like, you can reconnect and be in a different place, and we all, like, have learned and grown as people. Like, I'm sure there's been times as a friend that I've been, like, toxic or not a great friend, but, like, burning bridges is never a good idea either. Like, there's always, you know, the possibility that if you keep that relationship intact and, like, have grace for them, and if they can have grace for you, that things can kind of resolve in the end. So
yeah, and just having just the understanding that people's lives are looking different, and like, just because it's this way now doesn't mean it's always going to be this way.
Exactly.
Like, there have been a lot of things that I've just had to say no to recently, because I'm getting married and I'm in a really, like, busy part of my life, and I just don't have the capacity for everything all the time. But it's not like I'm telling people, well, no, and I never want to see you again.
Right,
you know,
exactly.
it's like,
just right now is not going to work for me.
Yeah, exactly. And that, like you said, that has to be communicated. Because a boundary is not a boundary if it's not communicated.
Exactly.
And I think that that's really important, because I think that there is also this trend of people being like, well, they kept on disrespecting my boundaries, and so I just cut them off, you know? And my question is always like, well, was that ever communicated? Like, what were your expectations communicated and then not met? Because that's different than just being like, well, they hurt my feelings, but I didn't tell them about it. You know?
Like, that doesn't really give you fair grounds to be mad at people if you're not communicating with them.
Yeah, exactly. So
Relationships, you know, friendships are tricky, but if you can kind of just hang in there and keep working on yourself as you either wait for that or just keep working on yourself all the time, even if you've already found that person, and, like, kind of examining your own life and making sure you're being the best friend possible, and, you know, hopefully that the other person is doing the same, and just keep making each other better, and then friendship. The power of friendship.
Like, did you ever watch My Little Pony?
Oh my gosh, no.
Friendship is magic.
Oh my gosh, it is though. It totally is. Anyway, as always, if you have any questions, anything, check out the Instagram. You can DM us, and we hope you have a good week. Bye.